Hey there, ADHD minders. Welcome back to the ADHD Mind, where we tackle the quirks, tips, and tricks for living life with a brain that just won't sit still. Today, we're diving into something super relatable, remembering names. Ever met someone, remembered their face instantly, but their name? Gone. Yeah, same. And if you're reading a book with multiple characters, game over. Let's get into why that happens and what we can do about it. So, what's going on here? Why can we lock onto faces like a homing missile, but names slip through our brains like sand? This is actually a common ADHD experience. Our brains are really good at processing visual information, like faces, body language, and even what someone's wearing. But names? They're just words. And when you've got ADHD, sometimes those words don't stick the way other details do. Now imagine you're at a social event trying to keep up with small talk, or worse, trying to remember the names of all the people in the room. While your brain is processing what people look like, how they act, and all the little environmental details, like the temperature of the room or what snacks are on the table, there's just no room left to focus on names. This happens to so many of us. By the time we try to grab hold of that name, it's already halfway out the door. The science behind this is super cool. Our brains are wired to prioritize certain types of information. Faces, for example, are one of the most powerful visual cues because humans are social creatures. We're hardwired to remember faces as part of survival, like recognizing friend from foe or remembering allies. But names, that's different. Names are abstract labels. They aren't tied to an immediate sensory experience. This is where ADHD brains, which are already operating on overdrive, run into trouble. ADHD affects working memory, which is like the brain's temporary holding area for information. It's that space where you keep details long enough to do something with them. If you're distracted or thinking of something else, say a cool thing you just saw on Instagram, names don't get the chance to settle in. There's even some evidence suggesting that ADHD brains have differences in how they filter out less important stimuli. So instead of treating a name like top-tier information, your brain might just dump it in the background while you focus on something more visually interesting. And here's the kicker. If you're reading a book with tons of characters, forget it. It's like being introduced to 50 people at once and then trying to remember who's who. You'll probably remember what they look like in your head, like, oh, that's the guy with the blue eyes and scar. But their names? Nope. It's the same thing in books, shows, or even video games. We're wired to remember visuals, but when it comes to names, the struggle is real. Honestly, it can feel pretty awkward. You meet someone, they introduce themselves, you're trying to be polite, but the moment they walk away, you're like, wait, what was their name again? It's not that we don't care, it's just that there's so much happening up there that something's bound to slip. I bet you've had those moments where you run into someone in public, you know you've met them before, you remember their face, but their name is just not coming to you. Happens all the time, right? But don't worry, there are definitely ways to get better at this whole name game. Here's some practical tips to keep you from turning every conversation into a guessing game. Repeat the name. When someone introduces themselves, say their name back to them right away. Nice to meet you, Sarah. It's a simple trick, but it helps reinforce that information in your brain. Plus, it's polite. Create a mental image. Associate their name with something visual or fun. If you meet someone named Lily, imagine them with a flower in their hair. Or if you meet someone named Mike, picture them holding a microphone. The more ridiculous the association, the more likely you'll remember. Wordplay or rhyming. Turn their name into something catchy. If you meet someone named Rob, think Rob the Job, or Bob with the cob. Okay, maybe not that weird, but you get the point. Rhymes or alliterations stick better in ADHD brains because they're like little puzzles. Give your brain a moment. This might be the hardest part, but when someone says their name, really listen. You know that voice in your head that's already jumping ahead to what you'll say next? Shush it for a second and just focus on the name. Get social. If you're in a group and you've forgotten someone's name, wait for the right moment to introduce them to someone else. Often, people will introduce themselves back, giving you another chance to catch it. And don't be afraid to just ask again. Seriously, it's better to ask, "Sorry, what was your name again?" early on rather than pretending you remember for weeks. We've all been there. To wrap things up, remembering faces but not names, totally normal for ADHD brains. It's all about how we process visual versus verbal information and how our working memory works, or sometimes doesn't work, but with some fun tricks. Like repeating names, making mental associations, and being mindful in the moment, you can totally improve at this. And remember, it's okay if you forget. You're human after all. That's it for today's episode, folks. Keep being awesome, stay curious, and don't stress about those forgotten names. You've got this. Hit like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you have any tricks for remembering names, or if you just remember everyone as that guy. I'll catch you next time on the ADHD Mind. Stay awesome, ADHD Minders.